Welcome. The December 8th, 2015 meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag? Oh, Phil?
It's in the hall.
It's in the hall. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Healy, can you please call the roll?
Mrs. Amanzato? Mr. Blasbach?
Here.
Mrs. Clarkin?
Here.
Mr. Jones? Mrs. McGoffin?
Here.
Mrs. Held? Here. Student representative?
Here.
Thank you.
Mrs. Healy, can you please recite the calendar?
Monday, December 14th, 2015, there will be a joint Town Council School Committee budget meeting at 7 p.m. at the North Kingstown Senior Center at 44 Beach Street. Thursday, December 24th and Friday through Friday, January 1st is a school holiday recess. Thursday, December 24th and Friday, December 25th, offices are closed. And Friday, January 1st, 2016, offices are closed. Tuesday, January 12th, 2016, will be a school committee work session at 7 p.m. at the North Kingstown High School.
Thank you, Mrs. Healy. Dr. Auger, would you like to commence the presentations?
Sure. I'd just like to start by mentioning how proud I am to have to be the recipient in North Kingstown of the Meritorious Budget Award. My congratulations go to Mary King, our Director of Administration, and our Controller, Steve Janelle. And I would ask Mary to talk a little bit about what the Meritorious Budget Award signifies for North Kingstown and a little bit about the Association of School Business Officials.
Steve Janelle, could you please come to the mic? Where's the mic? Just if you could just stand in front of us, please, I'd appreciate it. I don't think a lot of you know Steve. I don't think you've met him personally, but Steve is he's our controller. I know you've heard his name before. And I'm very pleased to announce that North Kingstown School Department has won the ASBO, which stands for Association of School Business Officials International Meritorious Budget Award for our FY 2016 budget presentation. So I'd like to just give you a little bit of information on ASBO. ASBO was an organization that was founded in 1910, and it's an educational association that supports school business officials who are passionate about quality education. And I think that passionate is an excellent word to describe the business office of the North Kingstown School Department when it comes to providing quality, timely financial information, quality education, and quality service. ASBO has a local chapter, which is REASBO, the Rhode Island Association of School Business Officials, and Steve and I are both members of that, and we attend many meetings, and Steve is on the board of that association as well. ASBO provides many supports and professional growth opportunities to school business officials, and one of the designations that I have as SFO stands for Certified School Finance Officer, and that's certified through this ASBO international organization. ASBO's website describes school business officials as those professionals who are traditionally behind the scenes making sure that whatever resources are available for educating our students are used effectively and efficiently. And as school budgets are squeezed tighter and tighter than ever before, the role of the school business official has never been more challenging or more important. And while I'm considered technically the school business official of the district, Steve Janelle, our controller, is really the behind-the-scenes person who assures that we follow state laws, labor laws, federal laws, and various audit requirements. About a year ago, Steve approached me about applying for this award, and applying is a word that we're going to use very loosely because the requirements of this word had a checklist that was 8 pages long. There are very stringent requirements from ASBO in order to submit and to win the award, and he was excited about it because REASBO was encouraging districts to apply because it had been many years since a district had applied or won. And Warwick, many years ago, applied and won the award but there haven't been any others, and there certainly haven't been any others in recent times because it's a very labor-intensive process. The requirements break out the budget into many different sections, and what it does that I liked is it really brings the budget to not being just about the numbers, but being about the whole picture of the North Kingstown School Department. So goals, programs, capital needs, financial statistics of the town, enrollment and student performance. And this document can be found on our website. We posted it back, I believe it was in July when it was submitted, and that's still out there for anyone to view. And at the time Steve approached me about it, I told him I would be happy to help him in any way I could. I wasn't sure that we would win on our first submittal, but I was really excited that he was taking the initiative to want to do this, and I thought at the very least it would make our budget that much more valuable to the North Kingstown community in terms of transparency and providing information. And the packet that was submitted, the budget that was actually submitted to ASBO, is more than 400 pages long. It has projections for the future. It has a lot of information about student performance and enrollment, and a lot of historical data as well. And I also do want to give a shout out to Rob Silvera from the high school because he helped with the photos that we included in that package, and that was actually noted in the ASBO award at how great it was adding the student photos and adding the pictures. So there were very few comments about changes, and I'm pleased to say that Mr. Janelle is already looking at ways to improve our FY17 submittal. So he's already on that task. So we would like to thank him tonight. This has been a big year for him because a few months ago he was also awarded the RIASBO School Business Official of the Year, which is also a very distinguished honor. So I'm really glad to present this and to thank Steve. I think this really shows the school district's commitment to showing timely, relevant, and transparent financial data of the school department. We have very high standards for our financial reporting. Steve and his staff work really hard behind the scenes to do that. I know that sometimes we feel, oh my gosh, do I have to do that? Yeah, we do. You know, there are a lot of laws and a lot of requirements that Steve keeps us on top of, purchasing regulations, you name it. So I'm going to reach out to the local papers, and hopefully this can be something that can be posted. It's a really big honor, and I thank the school committee for their commitment to us and support of us, and I thank Steve for his hard work in helping us receive this award.
Thank you, Mary and Steve. And actually, on behalf of the school committee, I want to, extend our thankfulness for the hard work and the diligence that you two do to put together a budget that the North Kingstown School Department can be extremely proud of. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'd like to introduce Dr. Michelle Humbert, who has done a tremendous job of leading the district effort these few years in preparing for the transition to the PARCC assessment. We now have our first results for PARCC. They came out a few weeks ago, and this is the first opportunity we have to, at a school committee meeting, to go over those results. So, Dr. Humbert.
Thank you, Dr. Auger. So there is a lot of data that I'm going to present this evening, but I'm going to try to give a broad stroke and hopefully a grain level that's appropriate for this evening. You also have some disaggregated results in front of you that are more detailed. So let's begin. First of all, the PARCC results that you're seeing tonight are based on the administration of this test in last spring. It was administered in 2 sections, so I'll go over that on one of the slides. So where did this all begin? The PARCC is based and assesses the Common Core state standards, which everybody is pretty well familiar with at this point. They started in 2010 with the approval process for Rhode Island, and then following that, we began working on revising our curriculum and our instruction. And that involved a lot of things. It was alignment of materials. It was studying the standards. It was aligning the report cards. It was creating our units of study. It was creating assessments for those units of study, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a lot of work that started 3 years ago. And we rolled out for every grade level. Some districts chose to just roll out staggered grade levels, but we just plunged in, and I think it served us well. So we had a full implementation by 2013-14. All of our schools were on board, and statewide most people were too. And then finally, last year was the first administration of the state test. As you probably know, there's two widely used tests now for assessing the Common Core state standards. One is the Smarter Balance, and the other one is the PARCC. So why PARCC? What is so important about this particular test? The first one is that the first important thing is that it's assessing college and career readiness and also measuring critical skills, such as problem solving, critical thinking. Those are the higher order thinking skills. So we have raised the bar with this particular test. Also, it provides a writing assessment. And for NECAP, we didn't, this is an annual writing assessment. For NECAP, we only had writing assessments by grade span. So this will provide an annual evaluation of that. Also, we are going to have growth and performance as well as absolute achievement. So what that means is there will be a student growth percentile that we will be able to look at so that we can measure individual students' growth as well as school-wide and district-wide. And then it allows us to have comparable results across schools and districts and member states. So the number of people, of districts, states that are using the PARCC assessment has gone down, but still gives us a pretty good reference group as far as size is concerned, which is helpful, and therefore it generates valid and reliable information. As you know, the greater the number of students taking the test, the better the information is for us. So during this first year of administration, you see the Rhode Island facts right there, approximately 75,000. That has actually increased with the new data that was recently released to us. That was there was about 82,000 for one of the tests and 84,000 for the other test. And so we had 80% of those in Rhode Island took the test on computer and 20% on paper. For us, we had close to 2,500 students taking the test, so it's a good number. It could have been better, but it is a good number. In grades 4 through high school, we did computer-based. The only grade that we did paper was 3rd grade, and 1/6 grade, grade level, grade 6 at DMS. And that was a capacity issue because we were afraid that we didn't have enough devices to be able to do the amount of testing we needed to within the window that we had. The states on the right are those states. There are 11 of them that administered the test last year. So some of those are going to be still using PARCC, but using a hybrid model. For example, Massachusetts is going to use part of its state test as well as questions that will be released by Pearson, the company that does the PARCC test. So participation is an important factor, as it turns out, with this particular test over this past year. And as Mr. Jones had pointed out, and we had a discussion about if participation is low, then sometimes you have to really be cautious about what the results are telling us. So we're going to take a look at that participation. But in general, let me just explain that the test is given to grades 3 through 10, and all of those grade levels take an ELA literacy. Okay, so they have a reading and writing test that they do in each of those grades. Math goes from 3rd grade to 8th grade, and then following that, and within the 8th grade as well, math is by content. So that means that the math tests are Algebra 1 and geometry. So the students it may be, well, a ninth grader, for example, may not have Algebra 1 or geometry, or a 10th grader may not have it. So it's not the whole grade level when you get to the high school that's taking math. The whole grade level is taking ELA, but not necessarily math. And so the 8th graders that took Algebra 1, they took Algebra 1 as a course, also took the Algebra 1 assessment. So you take the assessment when you conclude the course. So if they took it in 8th grade, that counts, and that's their requirement fulfilled for that test. So the following year, if they're taking geometry, they take that test at the end, and then they are done with their state requirements for math. So not everybody understands that. That's important to know. Okay, the next thing is that in order to have a reportable score, they have to have taken both portions of the test. So that we had last year performance-based assessment and an end-of-the-year assessment. One was in March, the other one was closer to the end of the school year in May. And so we needed the results from both of those tests. Some students took the PBA and then did not take the EOI. As a result, they have no reportable score. And so that also contributes to this participation dilemma that we have. So some things to consider. First of all, this is the first year, as you know, of this testing program, so it helps us to establish our baseline. That's the first thing. The next thing is some students may not have shown their best work. Not everybody was getting a message, especially from adults, that this test was important and the importance of what it was assessing. And so there is some wonder about whether the students took the test seriously across the state, not just our district, but across the state and across the POC consortium as well. So the participation rate was a little bit low, particularly for the high school, and you'll see that slide that's devoted to that. We had an average of 62% participation at the high school level. And the other thing to consider was the computer-delivered assessment. As I said, we did paper in 3rd grade. I think across the state, people are looking at, did students perform higher with a paper-based test or not? I have not heard of any conclusive results regarding that. And I do want to mention, I have said this before with NECAP, this is a state test. It's required for federal requirement through ESEA. However, it's not our only assessment of student performance. And so we have teacher feedback, we have grades, we have formative assessments, etc. But it is a very strong measurement. Okay, so our participation rates in the state, we had an overall participation rate of 88% in ELA and 89% in mathematics. These are updated figures from just a week ago. And in our district, we had 82% participation in ELA and 80% participation in math. And then if you look at the levels, I broke it out by elementary, middle, and high school, and I did a comparison there, or presented a comparison of the district and the state. So you see for elementary, for us, we were basically in line with the state. We're at 95%. And for the state is 95, 96%. The middle level, we start to drop. You can see the state has a 90% rate for ELA and 91. We dropped to 85% at the middle level for both ELA and math. And then at the high school, the average in the state was 77% for each, and we dropped at that point to an average of 62%. Here you have in front of you, you can see on your versions of this, the numbers. I think it's hard to see on the screen from here. But what you have here is the participation rate for each grade level in ELA. So you can see the main thing that's very obvious is that the lower levels have high participation rates, and they start to gradually decrease as you get to the middle level, and then, of course, as I mentioned, the high school level. And you'll see this for mathematics, basically the same story. what does that mean? You know, we can guess if those students had taken the test, would that have improved our scores or not improved our scores? What type of student was there? Was there any kind of trend? Was it students who were lower ability? Was it students that had lower income? So we ran some data. Sherry Briggs is our data manager, and she worked with me on this. And so what we did was we took all of the non-participants. Many of those were opt-outs. Some of them were other reasons for not taking the test, but that was a very small number. We ran the total numbers for those, and these are students, once again, that did not have reportable scores. So it means they might have just missed one of the tests, one of the portions of the test. So for ELA, we had a total of 397 students who did not take the test. Out of those, 42 were IEP students, 79 were the lower income students, 5 were our English language learners, and the 134 were none of those categories, not having any of those labels. And then for math, we had ran the data for that, and it was 384, basically the same type of numbers there. And then what we did was we took those students and went back and looked at their NECAP scores. So for ELA, out of those 397, we had NECAP scores for 325 of them. Out of the 325 that we had scores for, 193 of those demonstrated proficiency on the NECAP test. So they got a 3 or 4 on the NECAP test for ELA. For math, we had scores for 309 out of those 384 of the non-participants. And out of those, we had 233 who demonstrated proficiency. So overall, then, in general, the proficiency rate for ELA, for NECAP, for those students who did not participate in the POC test, was 59%, and for math, it was 75%. So I think we could safely say, I would make the assumption that if we had more students participating in the math, with 75% of them having proficiency in NECAP, though they are two different measures, it is likely our math scores would be higher. Okay, here's the fun part. This is understanding what the test is all about. We now have 5 levels, so it's no longer 1 through 4 like we had in NECAP. We have 1 through 5, and we have scale scores you can see for each one of those. So the scale scores run from 650 to 850. That's for whether it's ELA or whether it's math, and whether it's 3rd grade or whether it's 7th grade, it's the same. So the scale scores are the same. We don't have a scale score indicated between level 4 and 5 because that is one score that changes with the content and the grade level. So there are different scale scores for those, just between level 4 and level 5. We also have subclaims that are available to us, which we have been studying already. And those are a breakdown of specific skills within ELA and within math. So there was a public report, you might have had a chance to see it, that RIDE puts out. They do this for all of the state testing. It's very informative. And when we went through it, we were actually very pleased to see that we were the 5th highest in Rhode Island, 5th highest district in both ELA and math. This is eliminating districts that don't have K through 12. That might only have elementary, or eliminating charter schools that are considered their own district by the nature of how the designations go. So out of those Rhode Island K through 12 districts, we were the 5th highest. Also, we had a distinction with our Hamilton Elementary School being the 6th highest elementary in ELA. So that is great news. And Wickford Middle School was the 3rd highest in ELA and math for middle schools. So some bright spots there, something to be proud of. Here's the district level and state results. Then if you look at it, we are basically at about 56 proficiency across the district in ELA. At the elementary level, we're at 60% basically. At the middle level, at 61.5%, and at the high school level, 38%. And once again, proficiency in the park is now measured by levels 4 and 5. So here we have what you're seeing is proficiency rates for every grade level. The first one is the state average, so that's not us. But then following that, we're starting at grade 3 right through grade 10. That's all the grades that take the ELA. You can see where we have our proficiency rates. You can see some are very strong. They're all pretty solid, except as we get to the higher grades. But outstanding to note is grade 5 and grade 7 seem to be very strong cohorts for us. The next slide also shows proficiency. I put the proficiency rates on the top that is from the previous slide. But what you see here in these bars are the breakdown of every level of performance. So level 1 is the orange, then that next yellow would be level 2, then level 3, level 4, and level 5. Of course, you're looking for that bottom color to be as small as possible, and the 2 higher colors to be as big as possible. In math, we have the overall scores. Our overall performance was 44%. At the elementary level, we were at 48, at the middle level, 49, and at the high school level, 24. This is also the breakdown by grade level, goes to grade 8. Remember, that's the general math, goes right through to just grade 8. And then following that, we have the algebra and geometry. This algebra, 44% proficiency, includes the middle school students and the high school who took algebra. As well as the geometry, we only had 3 middle school students take geometry, and they were all 4s and 5s. So we had 100% proficiency in geometry at the middle level. The next slide shows the same thing that I did with the ELA. You have the proficiency rates at the top, and then the breakdown of levels. Now, this is another important slide. This shows the disaggregated, the subgroups that we have. So you'll see for instance, you have the gender that's there. So males and females, and you have the state numbers as well. Then you have the IEP and non-IEP. That's one of our biggest gaps there. You see 13% IEP, this is proficiency, versus 61% non-IEP. And then the LEP is our English language learners. We have a gap there. You'll see in the next slide with the math that the gap is actually wider for English language arts than it is for math. And that's probably because of the language. And then you see also the low income. The low income is our smallest gap. And the same breakdown for math. So the Algebra 1 is a very, very interesting thing that happened here. So the middle school students who take Algebra 1 are generally our strongest students in math. And so they are advanced, and so their performance shows that. They have 86, almost 87% proficiency. About a third of our 8th graders took Algebra 1. And then as a result of that, and the contrast is with our high school, where we only had 15% proficiency with those students who took Algebra 1. And the state, you can see that it kind of mirrors it. 82% proficiency at the middle level, and at the high school level, only 9%. With NECAP, The NECAP test was a rigorous test, but there was always a disparity between the results of that and the NAEP. The NAEP is the nation's report card. You've heard it called that before. That's because they randomly select districts and schools through the whole nation, and every 2 years they do this assessment, and you get kind of a nice view of how the U.S. is performing. And so there was always this major gap between the NECAP and the NAEP results. The POC, not so much. That gap closes because the POC is considered a more rigorous test. The bar has been raised. And so you'll see that the results are closer to the NAEP results. So there are connections, obviously, what we're learning from the test and where we go from here, what it means to parents. The individual student reports are absolutely phenomenal. You get information about your student in ELA and math, and the comparisons, you get the subgroup performance for your student and the comparisons to how your child has done in comparison to the district, in comparison to the state, and to the whole POC consortium. So it's a lot of valuable information. And those student reports are going out this week to parents Thursday and Friday of this week. We also have reports that are going out to students who were non-participants. They will receive a letter, and they will receive a shell report for the child's grade level so that the parents can see the information that would have been provided had the student taken the test. So we are continuing to meet together. We just had a workshop yesterday. Several of our school administrators were there. All of our school administrators will have attended this deeper dive into the data. We will do that on a district level. We will do that as early as Monday, looking at the POC results and sharing some ideas with that. Then, of course, we will be doing that at the school level. Some of the principals have already started doing very good data reports at their school levels. And we will also have workshops available to us so that we can focus more on where we can improve. And that's it. Are there any questions? Oh, I want to just look at the disaggregated for a minute. I apologize to the audience that this is not available, but I've just generalized the highlights you see in yellow there. For one thing, we were very, very pleased with Fishing Cove ELA results at almost 61%. So that was very impressive. Ms. Seitler is here, and we congratulate her and her school for their efforts. And you see there, as I mentioned, Hamilton had performed well also, both in ELA and in math, and then also Wickford Middle School. And then you see the disaggregated results for gender and for SES, which is our low income, and our IEP students. And really, there are no surprises there. I think the only main surprise that we found was ELA. There's a big difference in performance between females and males. The females really scored. Well, the proficiency rate for females is 64%, and for males it's 48%. So we have a 16% difference for gender for ELA. So that was pretty interesting. Don't know exactly what that means, although I speculated with Mr. Jones about the strength of the gender, but I won't discuss that now. It's not really appropriate. Does anybody have any questions?
Ms. McGovern, you mentioned that there were 2,500 students that took the test in total, but how many students were eligible to take the test in those grades?
So it would have been, well, I guess if you take the non-participation, you could add another 300, about 300, 350 to that. So close to 3,000. Because you're missing, obviously, kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, and then you're missing 11th grade and 12th grade for the majority of them. And then the math is only by content too, so.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mr. Jones.
thank you. First of all,
Should I get a chance,
appreciate,
Mr. Jones?
Dr. Humbert, you putting this presentation together, and we've obviously spent some time talking about the data, so I won't repeat some of this. I just had a few comments I think are somewhat important. I'm glad you highlighted the point. It's a piece of the assessment puzzle, and I appreciate the work that you and our administrators and teachers and support personnel all do to put together a whole piece of trying to figure out real teaching and learning that's going on. Ultimately, I think the taxpayers and citizens of our community have an expectation that their money is producing a complete education for the students we send here, and assessment's a critical piece of that. So I appreciate all the work that's done in the assessment area. I'm glad you put about the opt-out, because I know there was a lot of talk about it. I will just say that, for the parents who opted out, you really didn't do us any favors. I understand there was a lot of concern about the test, and I think some of those were valid, and I think it's right that those who had concerns about the length of the test and the amount that it perhaps was imposing on teachers and taking time away from other learning, and whether it might be used down the road for graduation criteria, and all those are valid concerns. But I think those were heard, they're being addressed, right, going forward. The test is going to be shorter. I don't believe, at least based on federal No Child Left Behind reauthorization, that the intent is it will not be used. I don't know at the state level if it will, but I think those concerns are being heard. But you can see that our data results aren't really an accurate portrayal of our students. There's too much disparity between the opt-out population to be a true representative sample. And so I just think it's just a shame that we didn't look at this test as a opportunity and voice our concerns through other ways to address it, but not use our children as kind of a vehicle, because ultimately when those who opted out ended up just, I'm not sure exactly, but I don't think they were really doing anything productive relative to taking the test. So I would just encourage parents, if you have concerns about this, Common Core and other stuff, to keep bringing those concerns forward and voicing them. But this is such an important assessment piece, and the state is spending so much resources on it. I mean, let's try and get a real accurate picture of how our students are doing. It's critical feedback to teachers and the administration and everyone. So I would just make a plea not to opt out going forward. I would also say that I know you sort of mentioned the male-female difference, but because we didn't put it up there, that the male-female difference in ELA is not just North Kingstown. Every school district I saw, right, and I don't think we could find one in the state where there was not at least a double-digit difference between male and female in ELA.
Right, across the state, 13%.
So I too don't know what's going on, but I'm hoping that RIDE is looking at that data, and that's part of a deep dive that someone's doing, because it's not just at the high school, it's not just at the middle school, it's across all grades. So it's just a fascinating thing that's going on. And so I just hope that, going forward, this is, just one piece, a benchmark. But I hope we can take the results we have, but keep going forward as we get better and smarter at it, and that those who do the test and administer it gets better and smarter at it too. So again, I plead you not to opt out going forward with your students.
And to that end, I forgot to mention that next year the PBA and EOY are merged, so there is one assessment only. So that will help, and we have a reduced amount of testing time too with the test sessions. And just to Mr. Jones' other point, the federal law does require, for our school accountability, does require that we have 95% participation. So we will take a hit on that in our school accountabilities.
Mr. Glasgow?
Just to sort of piggyback on what Mr. Jones had said, the one glaring thing when you look at these numbers is as you track the percentages of proficiencies throughout the grade levels, this sudden precipitous drop at the high school level. And we haven't seen that in years past, and I do not think that suddenly the high school population shifted its learning and test-taking ability in 1 year to the point where we're seeing that big of a gap, and something must have changed. And when you look at what changed between the lower levels and the high school level, the biggest thing that changes is the participation rate. Now, unfortunately, we will never know what those children would have scored had they taken the test. We can make assumptions. They may be correct, they may not. But I for one, I don't think that our high school has suddenly gone from doing very well on standardized testing to doing distinctly less well than the other levels in a single year. So something else is going on. And what's unfortunate about that is, we all pride ourselves in our rankings in various levels. Our high school is very well regarded throughout the state. We consistently come up in the, top 5 to 8 or whatever of high schools throughout the state. But one of those measures is going to be standardized test scores. And so when that, Rhode Island Monthly report comes out next year listing the top high schools, unfortunately, I would expect us to drop down a little bit based on these test scores, and it's very unfortunate. And we need to investigate whether it is whether it's an alignment issue at the high school or whether it's something we need to change in the way we're teaching. But I unfortunately think it's more likely, just an effect of not having a true population, full testing of the population that we have here.
We had, at the high school level, just to give you the exact figures, we had 249 students who did not participate in ELA and 202 that did not participate in math.
Dr. Roger?
Thank you. Those are excellent points. I want to take just a brief moment of time to highlight a couple of points that I think are very important ones. First of all, while our high school participation rate is low, and it definitely is, it is low statewide. It is particularly low in NK. And high school scores, even on the NECAP, tended to be lower than at the middle school level. But what I'm encouraged by is that there are a lot of parents and students out there that have taken the test at the lower grades and realize that they're getting good information back. And I think the likelihood is less in future years that they would opt out. I also see coming in a couple of years that this test would likely be a part of a graduation requirement. At least that's the plans from RIDE right now. So that again would reduce the number of students opting out, and we have some data. It's suggestive, it's not absolute, but that shows that the students who opt out, if they had taken it, we could have expected even better results. All that being said, North Kingstown K through 12 is listed as the 5th highest scoring district in the state. That's out of 31 similar K through 12 districts in the state. We're 5th in ELA scores, we're 5th in our math scores, and we are also 5th in science. It's very rare that you run the gamut like that, but we did. We are not 5th in the per pupil spending that we have for our students. For that, we are 17th out of the 31 school departments, and we're not 5th in terms of the wealth of this district. If you look at free and reduced lunch numbers, we are number 12 in that category. So then those are the two factors, per pupil spending and the socioeconomic status of the families in your district, that are the foremost determinants of student achievement. And one note on that, not to disparage the work from East Greenwich and Barrington, but you notice that they usually score at the top, if not the top two. And again, they are top two in all of these categories, and they are also the wealthiest districts in the state. And that's pretty much every state has that kind of correlation. So I see it as a very positive sign that North Kingstown is fifth in this group. These other telling categories suggest we should probably be significantly lower than that. And what I see is a tremendous effort from Dr. Humbert, from our principals, from our teachers, from our support staff, from our parents, taking the Common Core seriously, and before that, taking the NECAP seriously. I'm especially encouraged in that when we had the NECAP, we got baseline data for the NECAP about 7 years ago. And North Kingstown was cited in the past 6 years as being one of only 6 districts in the state that had significant improvement every year at every level. And that's because of the hard work of the people in this district doing that work. So I am encouraged that with this baseline data that I feel very confident that we're going to continue to see improvement, and we're going to start feeling more comfortable about those high school scores because we know the kids can do it. It's just a matter of feeling like they're going to get good data back to them, good information back to them. And as more kids are involved, and as we learn more about the test, I think we're going to be seeing improved data in North Kingstown. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Auger. Want to announce our next presentation?
I would. They've been very patient. We have 3 members of the Business, Career, and Tech Department, or the Career Department, which will soon be also a Career and Tech Department. Mr. Gormley, Mr. Garland, and Ms. Tavano are here from the department, and I believe Mr. Gormley and Mr. Garland are going to participate in a presentation in which they will show you the vision for the new North Kingstown Career and Tech Program in Business Finance. And part of your agenda tonight for your approval is approval of some spending. As you remember, back in the spring, we received significant grant funds, $250,000 from RIDE, to build some infrastructure around this program, and we had to have matching funds of about $62,500. So there's over $300,000 to be used as resources for the new Academy of Business and Finance at North Kingstown High School, and I'll let Mr. Gormley take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Auger. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Gormley. I am the department chair for the Careers Department at North Kingstown High School. Part of that department is a very strong business acculation with about 5 educators. This is a culmination of our work over the last 6 months, and I would be remiss if I did not thank the members of my department and recognize them tonight. We have Rich Garland, Joy Tavano, Frank Fusco, and Brandon Lemboy. They were all part of this. This is not my creation. This was it's a democracy, not a dictatorship. They all had an integral part in creating this idea and presenting this information to you tonight. So basically I have 2 pieces tonight. I just have a brief PowerPoint presentation that gets everybody up to speed on the committee and anybody in the audience. And then you, I believe, have hard copies of all of this, especially my Excel spreadsheet with different exhibits of the tangible assets that we plan to purchase with the grant money. So to begin, our mission is to provide the next generation workforce with targeted competence and pre-professional credentials, enabling advanced standing entry into colleges, university, and industry. Last June, in a very quick amount of time, the Rhode Island Department of Education asked school districts to apply for a $250,000 grant to be a career and technical education center in the areas of finance and insurance. We accepted that challenge in a very short period of time, compiled a tremendous amount of information, and with the strength of our business department here at the high school, I was not surprised that we were awarded the grant. Part of the district's role in this is that they had to match 25% of that grant, or $62,500. We were awarded the full $250,000. So tonight, I'm going to be showing you how we're going to allocate the $312,500. Just want to give you a little timeline. Since we've been awarded the grant, we met as a group at Dr. Auger, Dr. Humberg, and we doubly named our CTE the Academy of Business and Finance. Since then, we've been brainstorming. We've been talking to students, been talking to other districts, we've been talking to people in the areas of business to try to really get a sense of what we need to do to prepare our students to make them ready not only for a business acronym in college, but be ready for the world of work. So we sent out a press release to Rhode Island Media stating that we did receive the grant. And in October, we were basically architecting what our vision was of how we saw this academy being put into place. Later in the month, Mr. Jones was very helpful in Mr. Garland and I going to Bryant University. We said, you know, our goal is to send our students to the best business schools in the area, Bryant being one of them, and it was tremendously helpful for Mr. Garland and I to meet with the professors at Bryant, take a look at what they have, because ideally what we want to put our students in is a situation where when they go to Bryant, it's not new to them. They've done it before. They'll have a step ahead, not only at Bryant, but University of Rhode Island or any other business school they go to. They'll be a tremendous asset to them going forward. And then in the last couple months, we've been coordinating bids to vendors. I need to thank Mary King for helping me through this process. You know, she was instrumental in giving me some contacts of certain vendors to go to. The items in blue basically says where we go from here. Hopefully after approval tonight of the items we wish to purchase, we'll be having an advisory board meeting and an open house in January that we just discussed yesterday. One of our long-term goal, or very short-term goal after approval tonight, is we'd like to get that conference center that you're going to see in a couple minutes online for our open house on January 28th. I think if we play and do everything the right way, I think we can get that done. And then it's really just, I'm going to probably be a general contractor, making sure all the subcontractors are in place to have different timelines for our technology, for the demolition of the old labs, for the building up of the new labs, so on and so forth, with our end date being September 2016 to be full operation go. So these are our proposed floor plans. I just want to try to give you a visual of how we're going to allocate the assets and what we envision as labs of the future. The first thing you see is going to be a showpiece right outside these doors. We're going to purchase a 22-foot full-color stock ticker from Rise Displays. It's state-of-the-art. Bryant University has one. We're going to position this right between this spine staircase, right between the first and second floor. It's custom, and basically on it will not only be able to display the latest stock trends, but it'll be a messaging center. I think not only our department, but several departments at the high school, along with Dr. Manseri, will be able to utilize this for messages, important items that are going on in the school. I mean, I walk through that hallway every day, and we have about 1,000 kids congregating right in that area every day. It's a great opportunity to disseminate some information to them, along with promoting our academy. We're also going to purchase a 50-foot run of a 3-color ticker in the cafeteria. Again, just to to keep kids informed that what's going on in the academy. And again, if we're really going to do this the right way, we want to keep kids informed of what's going on in the financial world. We see it on the outside wall. This is just a basic rendering along the top so everybody can see it. This is our finance lab, and what Mr. Garland's doing right now is he did an excellent job of placing this into a 3D view, which he's opening right now. So our finance lab, we're really mirroring it after Bryant University. The current configuration in our computer labs at the high school is not really productive, and nobody's at fault for that. I think when the high school was built in 2001, it was the way it had to be. Technology was where it was at that time, and so now we really have advanced in terms of what we'd like to do. So we are really going to demo the 4 labs, and when I talk about the 4 labs, I'm talking about rooms 218, 220, 222, 224. They're our current business labs or computer labs, and we're going to really turn them into One, this is going to be a rendering of 218, which will be a financial lab. So what we're going to do is we're going to purchase, you'll see on your sheet, Clear Touch interactive boards. These are the latest and greatest smart boards, per se, and we're going to get 5 of them, one for each room and one for our conference center. So that's what you see at the front there. We'll also have a couple whiteboards in front for demonstrations. You don't see the computers on these desks, but basically we're going to take the students, many of the students in our lab face away from the instructor, and we're going to turn around and face the instructor. There's a U-shaped setup that we're going to have. And what you don't see here is in every finance lab or on every trading floor, most stockbrokers have double monitors. And, you know, it doesn't sound like a big thing, but from our speakings with different professors and people in the financial world, it is. Many large spreadsheets need to be viewed. So dual monitors are an essential part of knowing how to use them and the Excel programs with them to be able to be competent in that financial area. So it'll be 28 stations. On the back wall will be a 55-inch industrial LED monitor that we'll use with a market wall program to show different graphs and visuals of stocks that we're researching. So that will be on the back room of the wall. So that gives you a little sense, except the computers will be housed underneath. The monitors will be on top. Even though this room will be in a fixed position, if we ever did have to move, it has the capability to move. We don't have to demo it. The furniture that we got for this room will be able to be moved, but we don't see ourselves moving it. We like this configuration. We think it's most productive for student learning. So this next room you're going to see, these will be 3 labs. This will be rooms 220, 222, and 224. We have other business-type classes, obviously, in our curriculum. We're commended for it. I think it's one of the reasons we got the grant, because we have a vast majority of choices for students in the field of business. So our theme here is flexibility. A lot of times our current setup is very stagnant. We can't do a lot of the projects that we want to do within the class in the field of business. Just a quick example would be in Mr. Fusco's Honors College Business class. He does a manufacturing project, and the students are really limited with their manufacturing lines in regards to the stagnant furniture. They can't move it. They have to almost go in a straight line. What I know he teaches and students learn in that class is to multitask and almost be like in a circular motion, like you see at some of the major metropolitan cities that have beltways that are much more productive and efficient. These desks not only are going to be flexible in regards to movement, but also the chairs will be on rollers also. We're carpeting the room. There's the Clear Touches in front. And this goes across for rooms 220, 224. Mr. Vaughn will use it in accounting. Mr. Lambo will use it in web page design. It's just a much more modern setup. Also within these rooms, you don't see any computers. That's because we're buying 90 new Dell Latitude laptops computers, 30 per room. The reason we need the laptops is a certain software program that we need on the laptops that we can't get on the Chromebooks that the kids are going to be getting next year. So, Chromebooks can only have web-based applications. We need specific software programs on the Dell computers, such as QuickBooks for accounting. Those will be housed, Rich is pointing right now to that red kind of container. There'll be a charging and housing station that's lockable and movable where the laptops will be charged and housed. So that's, again, for those 3 rooms. And lastly, we're taking over, I don't know if we're taking over like we're Star Wars here, but we are going to take room 110 over as our conference center. We're going to call it the Cognitive Lab. As you can see, we're going to have flexible tables and chairs within that lab, along with our 70-inch Clear Touch. And then we're going to have a conference table with an outside line with the capability of video conferencing. This is where we'll hold some showcase events at the high school. This is where we'll have our advisory board meeting. We're lucky enough to have a couple of advisory board members in the crowd. The Wadovics have joined us tonight. Thank you for coming. But we've got a lot of things in place, and we really want to make it our showcase room. There'll be an awards display to display the several awards we're starting to collect. Over the last couple of years, we've really gone to Bryant College, University, and done well in their competitions. We've had some students given awards that we'd like to put on display. They're kind of all in Mr. Garland's room right now collecting, behind his desk. We'd like to showcase those off. So as you can see, this is what we see as a setup, but again, it's flexible. If we wanted to have Mr. Garland as a Shark Tank type presentation in his entrepreneur class, I envision them going down to the cognitive lab, setting it up in a style where we have board members in the front and the students present, and they have an audience, much like we have tonight. So that's our vision for the 3 rooms. And again, they're flexible. If we decide after a year that it's not what we want, well, we purchase the furniture to change the layout if necessary. All right. These are the 2 pathways that we'll represent in our Academy of Business and Finance. We have a finance pathway and a business administration and management pathway. As you can see, they're very similar, except for 2 major courses. One is called Business Economics, which will begin in 2017. The other is currently in place, Honors College Business Principles. Both CTE requirements will culminate with a student internship. If you go for the finance CTE, you'll have a finance concentration in your internship. And if you do it for the business administration, you'll have a business concentration. So it's 3.5 credits total. It'll be sequenced in a student's schedule throughout their 4 years. We're currently in negotiations with the National Academy Foundation that has a finance academy, so we can get national accreditation. That's going to help us with the Rhode Island Department of Education making this happen in September. So here in front of you, I'm not going to read off everything on this list. You have it in front of you. I will say just a couple things on it. Again, I tried to do a cost per unit with an item description, a quantity, and a total. The exhibits on the right, those are all on the back end of your packages that you have up there. Each exhibit is a picture of the tangible asset we're purchasing. If you scroll down, you'll see I divided it into technology, furniture, and fees. The breakdown at the very end is we're going to spend about 58% of the grant fund on technology, about 38% on new furniture and equipment for the rooms, and finally about 5% on fees in our DECA club, so on and so forth. If you're going to look at existing ongoing fees, what's this going to cost after this is all spent? If you scroll up a little bit, Rich, you have that labeled. So we've allocated some funds on a yearly expense of about $14,000 going forward, which will be a line budget item for the Academy. They're broken down, as you can see. There are a couple of best estimates that are italicized. Fortunately, there are not many. I got a lot of solid information from vendors. But one of those is the NAF yearly conference. If we join NAF, there's an expense with it, and they make you go on their national conference every year, 2 educators. The reason that's an estimate is because last year it was in California. This year it's in Orlando. It's really the flights to get out there that you'd have to allocate for the educators that go. That pretty much wraps up my presentation. I'm really here just to, if you do have questions, I can provide the electronic version of this if you don't have it to anyone that needs it. My email is right at the high school. I'm in the careers department. I'd be happy to forward it to you. And again, it's just our vision is to develop a more positive view of what business is about. After all, business is the means by which we organize society to get things done. And that's what our department does. We get things done. I think any task that we're given, we excel at. We're looking forward to the challenge, and we look forward to your approval to move forward with this venture that I think is going to really highlight our school in another light for career and technical education. So I can answer any questions at this time. If you want to disseminate the information a little bit more and email me, I'm also available for that.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Jones.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Mr. Gormley, Mr. Garland, the whole team, and everyone, Mrs. King, everyone else, and Dr. Auger for the support in making this happen. It's a really exciting concept. It sort of starts to dovetail with, I think, hopefully our committee's larger version about expanding personalized learning. I know you mentioned the 3.5 credits, high school credits, but also that some of these will be college credits too?
Correct. We currently have college credit for many of our business courses. Personal finance has an articulation with Rhode Island College. Entrepreneurship and leadership has an articulation with Rhode Island College. Honors College Business is with New England Tech and CCRI. We are working with other institutions right now, particularly New England Tech, to possibly get accounting. So there are college credits offered in our department currently. That wouldn't change with the current setup. I know when we create the curriculum for business economics, we'll be looking to partner an articulation agreement with somebody in that area too. So a lot of these students, when they do go into a business acronym at the next level, they'll have potentially many credits under their belt to focus on other areas.
Because we could start, looking at students who obviously go through this, get college credit, have a nationally accredited certification to put on their resume or their college applications. I think the internship part of that is crucial, and I'm glad you guys are including that aspect of it. And also even for students who, may not be on the college track, to get them career ready and just make them more marketable either to our local or wherever they choose, careers they choose to pursue. I think this is just a great initiative that the high school and the district is undertaking. I point out, I know you mentioned, I'm glad, some of the fees. I think one of the challenges we're going to have, obviously the state grant has helped with a lot of this. Furniture depreciates, computers have to be replaced. So we as a committee and the superintendent, are making sure that we're able to sustain this going forward. Now, we're able to bring in students from other districts, though, right, who could participate in this?
Correct. As soon as we get the approval from the Rhode Island Department of Education, we hope in September to draw people from other districts. Their district would pick up the fee. They would come to North Kingstown High School and be a member of our Career and Technical Education Center. I would caution the recruitment of those students for 2016, just because it's a vision. It's tough to sell an intangible asset, but I think once the build-out happens and the labs are an actual, real existing thing, I think the numbers will increase dramatically in the school year 17-18, and we can be seeing those incomes from other districts.
Yeah, that's just terrific, and hopefully, I know our town council president, Mr. McKay, was able to see some of the stuff at Bryant. So hopefully, when we have this open house, we get a full robust, we get community members, and I know, Ms. King, we talked about nobody wants to sponsor a boiler, but hopefully there'll be opportunities for the community when they see this to see this as a worthwhile investment on the business side, and maybe help with the ongoing costs for this. Dr. Auger out there trying to get someone to name our classrooms, but it would be great to get community also behind this in terms of helping sustain it going forward. So appreciate all the work everyone's doing. This is really exciting. Thank you.
I also just want to say thank you very much for the vision of the career department and for this fabulous presentation, very professional, a great model for our students about what a quality business presentation should look like. And I'm very excited about it and excited for the RIDE approval. I know that they have enormous faith in us. They wouldn't have given us the $250,000 grant in the first place if they didn't, because they already see great things happening in the career department at the high school. So I'm really looking forward to our second career and tech program here at North Kingstown High School.
Yeah, I would like to thank Mr. Gormley and Mr. Garland also. I know there were a lot of others behind the scenes, but mostly I was in contact with Mr. Gormley. Being a CPA, I'm incredibly excited about this program. I think it's phenomenal. The commitment of the people in our business department, and I can just feel the excitement and wanting to get this going and making it really successful. They've put in so much work I'm really excited to see how this plays out, and I think it's going to be a great, great thing for the high school. And Dr. Mansieri as well for her support of everybody. It's great. I thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is from Dr. Morse. I also know Dr. Mansieri is here. She can lend a hand if she would like or not. But it is for the high school program of studies, and we've asked Dr. Morse to just go over some of the highlights to some of the changes that would be happening in program of studies, and this would be for your approval tonight, and if not feeling comfortable about it tonight, at our next committee meeting, but hopefully tonight. Take it away, Dr. Morse.
Good evening. I believe you all have in your packets a copy of the program of studies and the bullet point summary of the changes that were included in the program. If not, I have extra copies. Does anybody need them up there? Do you have them? Actually, sure. So you'll notice that the first bullet point talks about the inclusion of the personalization and enrichment of studies section. So we added 2 pages into the program of studies to outline to students and families how it is that North Kingston High School is changing the way we do some things so that we're making the move towards individualization and personalization for students. And it's both the courses that they take outside that complement what they're doing in school, their internships. And I think you'll note as we go along there are several small changes that we have made besides including that section to outline it, courses and things that have been restructured to follow with that philosophy. So that section just describes the overall philosophy and allowing the students to take online courses. We're building the opportunities we have for students to take courses outside of the school day. Blended learning, and we're hoping to have more professional development over the next coming years to help teachers change their styles from traditional to blended styles in light of having the devices in every student's hand. And in places where it's most appropriate to have the blended learning, things like math labs and writing labs and things where you really do want to target individual goals for students. Most of the terminology is explained, and I know a lot of the things that are coming up in the changes of program of studies are new to students and their families, and we're restricted in the amount of space we can fit into those little handbooks. So more and more, we're going to include references to our website so that we can expand on those ideas for teachers, for parents and students, and to explain the terminology that the teachers are using when they're emailing parents or things that are in the program of studies. We're trying to be more family-friendly in our language, but when it's not possible and we have to use these terms, then we like to give them access to something, a glossary or something online where they can see what that means. The next thing was the description of the Success Academy level and weight. The Success Academy courses were in there, but they didn't have their own section. We had a whole section that described what was going on in the CP levels and a whole section for the honors levels and the AP. We really didn't have something dedicated to describing what the Success Academy is all about. So we wanted to give them equal recognition for what they are doing to prepare students. We also noticed that for a while it's been recorded that the weight of and the weighted rank of those courses was 2.0, and it really was out of line, as you can see, with the other weights. The other weights for college prep were 3.0, honors 3.4, and AP 3.7. So only 0.3 to 0.4 difference between those levels, a whole point difference between the Success Academy and the college prep. We didn't think that was equitable, so we changed it to a 2.6 that we will be using for those calculations. The replacement of the career pathways and career clusters, we had a page in there that was beautiful page that was created by the Careers Department that outlined their pathways for students taking career courses. Most of those were interdisciplinary. They included things from other departments, and other departments were developing pathways also. And we thought that it would be more sensical to the students to direct those into the 16 career clusters that were created by the Department of Education, and those are the same clusters that the guidance counselors use when they're working with students in career exploration and on the Way to Go Rhode Island. So those 16 clusters are what the students are usually working with. So we took all of the courses, it was the guidance department went and met with every department in the building, and they built a list of the courses in each department that were related to the 16 clusters. So we replaced those career pathways with something that is more informative for all of the courses across the board in all departments. The next part was the establishment of a career and technical education section, and that is a description we wanted something separate that really did recognize the career and technical as entities within our building. So there's a section for the robotics and engineering program, and there's a section for the business and finance. Those courses, the main courses that are relative to those departments or those pathways, are described in full in that section, and then there are cross-references to the individual departments where the electives are. Clarification of early college enrollment, dual enrollment, and concurrent enrollment. This was important, we felt, because with all of the new RIDE regulations and where students can take these concurrent enrollment courses inside the school or dual enrollment courses where they're outside of the school on a college campus, and then we have the early start programs like CCRI. We have a student at Johnson & Wales full-time this year for their senior year. So there's such a variety of things that students can be doing now and mixing their high school and their college credits early that we felt we needed to really distinguish what was going on there so families could understand the different opportunities. The reorganization of the fine arts courses, I think, is something really exciting going on in our fine arts department, and it speaks to the personalization that we're trying to reach for students. We used to have a series of foundations of art, and then you'd take a drawing course or painting course or sculpture course. So we had these multiple sections of individual types of art courses. And what they did was restructure it into Arts 1, Art 2, and Art 3, where students can, if they're taking art for the first time, they'll take Art 1. The second time they take art, they'll be enrolled in Art 2. And they're going to approach it in a thematic way where they'll present something to the students. And the students choose the medium through which they want to express their response to the prompt or the theory that is asked of them. So you could have a student in that class deciding to express it in a painting or watercolors or drawing or sculpture. So it gives the students a lot of flexibility in what they want to do with their artwork. Maybe in one project they want to do drawing, and the next project later on that semester they want to do something with painting or sculpture. It also gives us a lot of flexibility for students in the scheduling process because they no longer have to wait for that Drawing 2 course to be offered. They can take any Arts 2 course. So that, to me, is a great change for our students, and I think it does step towards that individualization. The inclusion of the Geometry and Algebra 2 option, this is just a similar reorganization that we did a few years ago when we have the Algebra 1 Geometry, where the students can take Algebra 1 as a fall block course. They take it every day, followed by the spring geometry course every day. So they have 2 math courses that they take within 1 year. It was originally designed as a catch-up course for students who failed Algebra 1 in freshman year. They could take the sequence in sophomore year and end their sophomore year back on track with their peers, ready for Algebra 2 in their junior year. So we noticed that some students, we opened it up this year to students who wanted to accelerate. We always have a lot of, not a lot, but a good number of freshmen who come in every year who are a little nervous about taking Algebra 1, even though they might have taken it in the middle school. They're kind of on the fence. They're not sure they're quite ready for that step to geometry, and they repeat Algebra 1. And then, you know, mid-year, they're kind of saying, well, this is a lot easier than I thought. I'm not as nervous as I thought. Maybe I should have taken geometry. So we decided to offer the Geometry Algebra 2 in the sophomore year so that students can take a full year of Algebra 1 and not feel like they're putting themselves at a deficit. They can still take the Geometry Algebra 2, doubling up in their sophomore year, and be able to take pre-calculus in their junior year. So it offers more flexibility to students. The economics course is now included in the math-related courses. We're trying to open up areas for students who have finished the 3 years of math that they want or need in order to meet college entrance requirements and want to explore something a little outside their traditional math class, but still fulfill that RIDE-mandated 4th year of math. New course adoptions this year, AP Spanish Literature and Culture. So this will follow the AP Language and Culture course. So we had students this year take AP Spanish as juniors, and now this will give them an AP course in their senior year that they can follow up with. We actually ran 2 sections this year of the AP Spanish Language, and both of them are nearly full. So we're expecting a good cohort of students taking this additional course in their senior year. NK Writing was proposed by the English department. We noticed in the reading and writing workshops that some students were taking it because they needed the writing component, but they didn't necessarily need the reading assistance. So we were over-servicing some of the students who needed that writing help. So NK Writing will be for students who don't need necessarily intensive services, but want to brush up and improve in their writing skills. Art 1, 2, and 3 was mentioned before. Creating music with Chrome. The music department took a look at the kinds of things they had to offer for students who were not traditional musicians. So as they explained this to me, this is more for the garage band type of student who likes to create with music and wants to work in a creative way with music, but don't necessarily play an instrument or want to join a chorus. The science of sports deals with the physiology of exercise. Pharmacology, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Contemporary history will go from 1970 to 2005. Transition exploration is another one of those personalization courses that's being included. Students with special education services who are in our life skills classes or who have the transitional services get a lot of help in figuring out what the next steps are after high school. We have some students who are receiving special education services who don't get that extra help, looking for their next career or their next step. So this course was designed to help those students who want to do a career exploration and have some help figuring out what aptitudes do I have, what are my interests, how do I get training, how do I make those connections. So it really fills a gap for those students who aren't necessarily going to college and getting those pre-college services, but also aren't qualifying for the transitional services. World Cultures is going to be a course that is open to students at any level, and it's expected to be something where students can explore the nature of other cultures without having to take a typical Spanish or French or foreign language learning course. When anything comes into our program studies, you always have to think about what is it going to take the place of. So we put out to the departments, if you're going to adopt this other course, what is currently in your program of studies, or what are you currently teaching that will no longer be offered to fit this other course? In English, public speaking was chosen. The enrollments for that course have been declining, and this year we have 12 students scheduled. It started out at 19 before we tumbled the schedule, which means when you fit to see students choose courses, but they won't necessarily fit into their schedule once all of their chosen courses are looked at. So due to the declining enrollments, they decided that public speaking would give way to the NK writing. Sci-fi, fantasy, and beyond hasn't run in many years, and it was just kind of a holdover in the program of studies that we cleaned up. Portfolio preparation has been absorbed into that new restructuring of the art courses. It still exists. It just doesn't need to exist independently. Astronomy and science, another, sadly, low enrollment course. I remember when my kids were here and they took this course, it was really a wonderful course. I think it still is a wonderful course. Students are just making other choices. So that was the one that was decided to take the place that for the pharmacology and the science of sports. Boat building was something that kind of phased out as the climates enrolled and we lost the facility that we were teaching the course in, and the instructor left. So it was just kind of a perfect storm of things that it was time to let go of boat building. And Newport is offering a program over there that they're building a CTE around. So we don't believe there's going to be a gap for our students who are really interested in pursuing this. One thing that I noticed as I was looking at my last-minute notes that wasn't on that list is advanced topics in psychology. And this is a course that really does have good enrollment, but with the number of psychology courses and AP psychology courses, they felt it really was perhaps redundant with the other offerings, and that they would have more of a variety of course offerings by offering something else and absorbing those students into the existing psychology or AP psychology courses. And the rest are course title changes. Those are just noted because sometimes people get used to a course and you go looking for it in the program of studies and you don't see it, and it's just changed a little bit. So, can I answer any questions for you?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Morse, for this, and Dr. Manseri. It took the time to go over this with me in advance, so guys, keep my question short. Question on when students take online courses, how the GPA then is counted on their transcript.
Whenever we have students take an outside course, because it's always difficult to judge the grading relative to our own grading, we don't include that course in our GPA. We give them credit for it, but it's not calculated into their GPA.
I think as we expand that, that's probably something we need to revisit, especially if we assume we're selecting our online courses based on some level of accreditation and stuff. So I think that's going to be increasingly something we should look at more.
I think that will become feasible in the future once we work with a vendor in a consistent manner. So right now we're exploring different options. We're working with several different places like Virtual High School Florida, Virtual Learning Academy. Some students take University of Nebraska high school courses. So there are so many different transcripts coming in from different places. It's really hard to calibrate. So I think once we establish some good relationships and we know how their courses compare to what their students are getting in comparable courses here, that it will be easier and I think more of a confidence level to do that.
I'd say I appreciate the expanded comments about personalized learning, and this, I guess, now goes back to parents going, if you look at the breadth and depth of stuff our high school is offering, it's fantastic that students are able to have this amount. And so I would say to parents, this is where you need to if you see something or you feel your child has, a passion for something and want to explore it, work with the folks at the high school to see if we can fit it in, make it happen. That's the whole part of personalized learning, is to get students excited about their education and to help them think about their college and career aspirations. So I appreciate that we've put a lot more effort into the and are embracing the personalized learning stuff. I know a lot of work went into this, so I appreciate the administration and the faculty and everyone who worked on this. It's just really nice to see us keep expanding more and make, North Kingstown High School a destination school for students in Rhode Island.
And I have to say that the guidance department worked really hard this year. They visited every single department and attended a CPT, and I think this program of studies represents a true collaboration of the faculty this year.
Thank you.
Ms. McGovern?
I just wanted to say that, in reading this and going over the PowerPoint in advance, it was very obvious to me that this program of studies has become so much more like a college course catalog than something you would expect to receive freshman year as a parent of a freshman coming into high school. It is impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation, I want to extend my appreciation to those of you. I know many of you have come for the school start time discussion. It is now. And if you, I apologize that the screen may be a little hard to see. Some of the information is in the packet for the agenda. The rest, whatever is not there, will be posted tomorrow morning so you can see some information. Mr. Horn is here. Dr. Humbert and I will be a part of this presentation, and Dr. Humbert will begin by going over what the research says about sleep times for adolescents. And, I think many of you know that a number of districts in Rhode Island are looking at this issue. North Kingstown has looked at this issue in great depth about 10 years ago. And in not such great depth, but still it was on various agendas over the years since then. And really not a heck of a lot has happened in terms of the start time at the high school. In different years, since I've been here for about 7 years now, there have been some cuts to the busing fleet because of budgetary issues here and there. And we're at a point right now that we see a real correlation between what we can do with start times and how that relates to our transportation services that we can provide. So we're going to try to do a comprehensive review of all this and open up the discussion. So, Dr. Humbert.
Thank you, Dr. Auger. So this is all about sleep, but I hope that you don't fall asleep as I go through the research that's here. There's a lot of information on this topic and several empirical studies. So I tried to select the most relevant and the most current for this presentation. So the first thing is that the adolescents who do not get enough sleep are more likely to be overweight, not engage in daily physical activity, suffer from depressive symptoms and moods, engage in unhealthy risk behavior such as drinking, smoking tobacco, and using illicit drugs, and to perform poorly in school. There are additional risks: attention and memory problems, poor impulse control, emotional dysregulation, decreased motivation, elevated risk of hypertension and long-term cardiovascular morbidity, and motor vehicle accidents. You have a sheet, school committee members and the rest of our guests on the stage, with additional symptoms that are listed. So adolescents begin to experience a shift of up to 2 hours relative to the sleep-wake cycles in middle childhood. So that's their sleep rhythms. Therefore, the average teenager has difficulty falling asleep before 11 p.m. and is best suited to wake at 8 a.m. or later. So they need more hours of sleep, and they need it later. Other factors compound this effect homework, extracurricular activities, after-school jobs, and the use of technology. Also, they didn't list it, but in several of the articles that I read, caffeine also plays a part in this. So regarding specifically with school times, earlier school times contribute to insufficient sleep. Delaying school start times is an effective countermeasure to chronic sleep loss. And delaying school start times may benefit physical and mental health, safety, and academic achievement. I have cited references on each of these, but in the little packet that I gave you is the complete list of references that I used for this particular presentation. There's also a list of other sources of information and websites. Studies comparing high schools with start times as little as 30 minutes earlier versus those with later start times demonstrate the following adverse effects: shorter sleep duration, increased sleepiness, difficulty concentrating, behavior problems, and absenteeism. Delaying school start times for middle school students has similar positive results. So later rise times, more school night total sleep, less daytime sleepiness, decreased tardiness rates, and improved academic performance. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends starting times of no earlier than 8:30 a.m. for adolescents. And the National Sleep Foundation recommendations are for 8 to 10 hours of sleep for adolescents. You also have the Sleep Foundation recommendations here, and the one that's in color, which actually says that I need 7 to 9 hours of sleep tonight, so we can't go too long this evening. There was a 3-year multi-site research study. This was conducted, the results came in 2014, I believe. There were 8 public high schools in 3 states. Minnesota, Wyoming, and Colorado were the 3 states. There were 9,000 students that participated in this study, and they found that an 8:30 start time or later allowed for 60% of the students to obtain at least 8 hours of sleep. So they had various sleep times, and so the 8:30 time was the time where more than 50% of the students were able to get the sufficient or adequate amount of sleep. Academic performance in core subject areas and state and national achievement tests showed significant improvement. Absenteeism and tardiness was reduced, and car crashes for teenagers, those who, of course, who were driving age, were reduced by 70%. In some of the studies, it wasn't conclusive as to whether that was related directly to the hours of sleep or if it was actual traffic patterns in the cities. According to a study released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 83% of schools start before 8:30. So many schools around the nation, even though in spite of all of the data that we have, still start school before 8:30. The average start time for 39,700 public middle schools and high schools and combined schools, that means a school that had both middle school and high school together, was 8:03. And that was based on data from the 2011 and 12 school year. So the reason that most people, or many people, still start at the times that they do earlier than we would like is because there are common barriers to later school times. The first one is the big one, and that's increased transportation costs due to changes in bus schedules. The second one is difficulty in scheduling after-school activities, especially athletic programs. The next one is reduced after-school employment hours, although some employers said that they didn't really need students until later in the day. The next one was challenges with child care for siblings. And the next one was elementary schools starting school in the dark. And the last one, as a major barrier was lack of awareness about the importance of sleep and school start times. That was from a public stakeholder perspective. And those are 3 main sites, and as I said, there are several other sites that are listed on one of the handouts that I gave you, and that is a front and back too, so that you can see the resources that are on the back as well. That would be on the back of the references that I used. And then the last thing was, and Dr. J, I didn't know if are you going to cover that? Okay.
Apologize again if people cannot see this. If you feel free to come closer to the front if this is something that interests you in seeing this information. Members of the committee, I know that a number of you have expressed to me over the years of being on the committee that this is an issue that you care deeply about. As I said, over many years, I think busing has been something that has been sacrificed a little by little in terms of trying to prioritize other areas for our budgetary needs. And the result of which you have a comparative sheet on your desk. And North Kingstown right now has the earliest high school start time at 7:15. There are a number of schools in the state that are at 7:20, and most of the suburban districts in the state are somewhere between 7:30 and about 10 minutes of 8. Ironically, it's the urban districts that have an 8 o'clock start time, if anyone has them, but that's largely because busing isn't as great a concern. A number of students in urban districts actually walk to school, more so than in suburban districts. We also have the distinction of, for our latest elementary school times, they're some of the latest in the state. So we have the widest early, arrival for high school to the later arrival for elementary of just of any district in Rhode Island. And I know a number of you, if all of you, would like to do something about that. So tonight's presentation is to show you some options. As people get creative, I guess I could say these probably may not be the only options, but working with Mr. Horan, who may make a few comments tonight, I'm sure, and answering questions for people, we have looked at these 3 as some of the most realistic. Option 1 is to get the high school start time to 7:30. That is certainly not ideal, and we would adjust the middle school and elementary times without adding buses. It would not make the elementary times any later, but it would push the middle school times back slightly. Option 2 is to swap the high school and middle school start times without adding any buses. Those 2 options really don't require too much extra funding. Option 3, however, does require quite a bit of extra funding. And that I consider over the years as assistant superintendent and doing a number of surveys and seeing the results from as far back as 2005, I think the sweet zone that people have identified, and from some of the research that Dr. Humbert has identified, would be a goal of trying to get the high school to about an 8 o'clock start and to have the busing situation set up so that no elementary school starts any later than 9 o'clock. That obviously is a much more condensed version of this and would require roughly 6 or 7 additional buses at an expense of $350,000 to $400,000 to do that. So let me talk about some of the details here. Option 1 would have North Kingstown High School starting at 7:30. That's 15 minutes later than it is now. Davisville Middle School and Wickford Middle School would go at 8:20, which is 15 minutes later. And Tier 3 would start Fishing Cove, Forest Park, and Quidnesset at 8:55, which is 15 minutes later than they are now. And the last tier would be Stony Lane and Hamilton, which would not have any change. This would also this would also help us to get to the point where, with the current fleet, we could get to 4 days of late bus service, which is something that we desperately desire as well. And we've had some issues with our late bus that, because of the availability of buses, that we cannot always get that late bus at the optimal time. It often comes later than we would, it always comes later than we would like it. So that's another factor with the relationship of, the times the kids are at school, what we would desire, and what we can accommodate with our current fleet. Option 2 would have Davisville Middle School and Wickford Middle School starting at 7:30, which is 30 minutes earlier than they currently are at. High school would then go to 8:20, which is 65 minutes later. That would fit very nicely into what Dr. Humbert identified as the research being, optimal around an 8:30 start for high school students. And Tier 3 would be Fishing Cove, Forest Park, and Quidnesset, which would be 15 minutes later than they currently are right now. And again, Stony Lane and Hamilton, again, would be no change. This also would be something that could help us with the late bus program. Tier 3, again, this is where I feel we get to probably our most optimal version, is that Tier 1 with the high school would start at 8 o'clock. That means they would be dismissed at 2:30. Davisville and the high school and Wickford Middle School would be starting at 8 o'clock. Davisville and Forest Park would start at 8:20. Fishing Cove and Quidnesset would start at 8:40, and Stony Lane and Hamilton would start at 9 o'clock. So that pushes the latest times to 9 o'clock. It moves that up 25 minutes, and it moves the earliest time back 45 minutes. And that, to me, is a very good version. I would be very happy with this kind of version. I'm not looking for the committee to take a vote on this evening. I hope I have any other slides. Okay. So let me go over this a little bit more with Option 3. Option 3, we believe, and Mr. Horan can answer some questions on this later if you have some, we would require about 6 to 7 extra buses at an additional cost of $350,000 to $400,000. Given the current driver shortage that exists in the industry, a lead time would be necessary, so the earlier we could make this decision, the better, although we're going to be realistically working on this very issue during budget season. So we may, the more we go to that around May when we traditionally approve our budget, if this item gets approved at the same time, it's going to be a pretty tight schedule in terms of making sure that we can actually get the buses and get the bus drivers in place for September. So that may be an issue in at least getting off to a good start in year 1. The lead time would be required to bring the contractors on board and obtain the vehicles. The high school and Davisville Middle School sports would be affected, as departures would be at least 45 minutes later to an hour than at present. This would be the biggest problem for outlying areas such as Pontiac-Ansett, Bristol, Westerly, where there's a long ride to games. It is doable, but it is something that we need to be considering. And just like anything else, right now we're kind of in a theoretical stage. I believe we have very good information, tells us what we can do here. But as we do more, what Mr. Horan calls hard routing, where we really see the real effect of how this would work, there may have to be some adjustments in this. So it's not rock solid that all these numbers are actually, airtight. There may be some adjustments here and there. So those are the major points to be made here. Again, I don't see this as an issue where the committee, I would be looking for the committee to take a vote tonight. I think it is something that we should be discussing for weeks and possibly months to come, particularly as we go through our budget season and see what we can do. I consider it a challenge, and I hope you would give me that challenge to see in my proposal of the budget if this is something that we can fit. Last year, as many in the audience know, and as you know, we had quite a major ordeal in obtaining the funding that we needed to do another project that we felt was a very important priority, which was full day K. And that was even more money than this. We found a way to make it work after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but it did work. So seeing that that's already happened, it's hard to say if this is an easier task or all the more difficult because of what we were able to do last year. But I'm up to the challenge, and I hope that you are as well. And I know that a number of folks would want to come to the microphone tonight for citizens' comments to talk about this issue as well. Anyone have questions?
I have an article that I will share with you that discusses the bus driver shortage nationwide. So that is definitely a concern that Mr. Horan and I have. He's having a hard time with just the routes that we have. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that that is a big concern. The other thing that is not on here that Dr. Humbert brought up to me sort of at the end was that we would need to keep an eye on, if we're starting Wickford Middle School and Davisville Middle School at different times, we'll have to keep an eye on the scheduling of itinerants because we do a lot of shared staffing between those two schools. So that's just something else for us to keep in mind. I think on top of the money, my biggest concern is the timing. Like we said, we don't find out our budget until May 5th or May 6th. I can tell you that we would not likely be able to start this in September if that were the case. People buying buses have to go to the bank. They need to know what they're doing. They need to get their drivers, and that takes a lot longer than just a couple of months to get on board. So the timing is very tight, very tricky, especially because we find out our budget number from the town so very late. And then just the whole shortage. Companies that pay more than we are paying, your Laidlaws, I don't even know if they're still in business, your Ocean States or whatever, they're all having this bus driver shortage. And they contributed to a lot of factors, but it is a nationwide issue right now.
Mr. Blasbaugh?
I can say, I've heard ads on the radio saying they have signing bonuses.
That's exactly what this article says, too.
I've heard it in local radio. They'll give you a signing bonus if you bring a bus driver to ABC Company.
You'll get one and they'll get one.
That's right. Everybody will, so if you know anybody. I just want to point out to folks, this is the beginning of our discussion. It's the very first presentation that we've had on this issue in a while, and it's something that we're going to have to look long and hard at, as we move towards our budget season and just in general. So I welcome any comments that anyone may have during our citizens' comments period, and then otherwise, as we move forward with, examining this, because it's very difficult to make everyone happy in something like this. These times affect so much throughout the district, whether it's parents' working hours, whether it's when we run sports, whether it's, just schedules. It impacts so much. It's something we need to look really carefully at because changes can really upend things. And everything moves off of everything else. You move one time, it affects another time, which affects another time, and it cascades. So it's really a tricky proposition to make changes like this, so it's not something that we can take lightly.
Mrs. Healy, do we have anyone signed up for citizens' comments? Is there anyone who would like to make some citizens' comments? If you could just state your name and address, please.
It's adjustable.
Really, Doctor?
You need to take your vitamins to grow there,
I do.
Christine.
Christine Marinello, 31 Bromley Court. I just wanted to say that to thank the administration for considering this. It is an issue that parents have been speaking about for a while. I have 2 children who attend Stony Lane. That start time is 9:25. As Dr. Auger noted, the latest start time in Rhode Island. And my children got off the bus today at 4:15 in the dark. So I know you have to balance a lot of different things. Starting school in the dark, getting off the bus in the dark. There's a lot of different things at play. We recognize that. But I am fully in support of later school times for the high school students. I think that the evidence really does support that. But while you consider that, please consider the couple of schools, which is not all of the elementary schools, but I believe it's just Stony Lane and Hamilton, that have that really late start, the 9:25, which makes it tough at the end of the day for the little ones.
Forest Park as well right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are 3 right now that have that late 9:25 start. So as you go through and consider, I think, you've got 2 ends of the spectrum to consider, and I do think a lot of citizens are in support of changing these as if it's possible, depending on what the cost is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just hand it off.
Yeah, probably best just hand it off to the...
Jennifer Hoskins, 26 Sylvan Court, Saunderstown. I appreciate, again, also you taking the time to make this an agenda item and an issue for this year. Going to town council for $350,000 will be a feat if we need to, but we would take it on. I think my concern is really looking at other options as well. Can the high school and middle school ride the same bus? Can we make bus stops instead of stopping at every house in neighborhoods? Just a lot of different areas where I feel like you could have some cost savings from the busing side that we don't have, and I'm not sure they've been looked at. So really making sure that when we go and we have a final number, if this is approved, to go to the town and try and get that money, that we really are at the number we need and that we've looked at every option to make that the least number. Starting at 9 would be better, but 8:45 would be the best. So for our Stony Lane students, Hamilton and Stony are still at 9 o'clock, which still means they don't get home till 4. So, thank you.
There's someone, oh.
Hi, Lisa Tenner, 101 Waterway Drive in Saunderstown. I also appreciate all the work that's going into this issue and understand that this is not going to be an easy process. But as a parent, I think when we're looking at our children's academic performance, their emotional health, mental health, physical health, it's just overwhelming. And I think we owe it to them to make this work, whatever it's going to take as a community. So thank you.
Amy Coleman, 71 John Scott Lane. I guess it's a little discouraging that Stony Lane and Hamilton and Forest Park, where when the budget was cut last time with regards to the busing, those were the schools that were pushed out to 9:25, and that situation is the last one being addressed, if it's going to be addressed at all. I've said this to the superintendent before. Stony Lane and Hamilton can't always be the schools that have the burden of everything when the budget is cut. And I'd just like to say, in regard, I have 2 children that are at Stony Lane, and when I went in for my son's parent-teacher conference, she told me that he's, falling asleep towards the end of the day. And that's a kid who gets, we make sure he goes to sleep by 8. And he still gets up he gets up before 6. He's up for almost 4 hours before school starts. And you can't expect a kid who's been up for 4 hours to perform, then perform for the 7 hours of school. And I don't imagine he's the only one who's going through that when we make sure he gets enough sleep, and a lot of people have more challenges with that. So I'd like you to, really not leave Stony Lane and Hamilton out when it comes to changing the school start times. Thank you.
evening, School Committee. Ed Ferrario, principal of Stony Lane Elementary School. I've taught in the district for 22 years, and I think my earliest time when I taught at Forest Park was 10 of 9. So that's been increasingly getting later and later each year. And as an administrator over the past 7 years, I've noticed that our parents are picking up children at 3:15, 3:20, even though school doesn't get out until 3:45. Because they can't make either doctor's appointments or orthodontist appointments. They need to get to sports, band, instruments they play after school, and that they are losing instructional time because we're such a late school time. Our students, as Ms. Coleman just said, are up 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. They're ready to go. By the time they come, many of our students have been at daycare for 2.5 hours. Their parents have dropped them off before they go into work. And then they go to daycare after school. So they have like a 10 and 12-hour day, and yes, they are falling asleep. We're losing their interest at 3 o'clock, 10 past 3. We try to do activities that are motivating them, science, hands-on activities, getting them outside to play a little bit more, and especially our kindergartners, to rejuvenate them. But it's a struggle for our little ones each day to watch them have school until 3:45 each day. So thank you for considering this this option for our elementary schools. Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to add, I know, Dr. Jay, you noted one thing on the sports, and maybe I'm one of the biggest proponents of the sports program here, but sports should not be driving our kids' academics times. The sports in Rhode Island at the middle school is run by the Principals Committee on Athletics for 6th to 8th grade, and at the high school by the Principal Committee on Athletics. I darn sure hope you principals are going to your representatives and saying, when we change start times, athletics should not be driving that decision. So whether it's changing geographic alignments at the middle school, because I assume it's mostly the fall sports, right, because the day ends sooner, or playing games on Saturdays or something, but really athletics should not be an obstacle to changing the start times.
Mrs. McGovern?
Dr. Auger, I noticed that South Kingstown recently conducted a survey of their parents on this same issue, and their proposal was, they basically had two proposals: keep things the way they are, or switch the high school and elementary school start times. Did you look at that as a possible option and not include it for a reason?
It's my sense from previous surveys in the district that that parents did not see that as something that they wanted. I'm all for, we're at the beginning of the discussion, and if it's the will of the committee, we can ask that question in a parent survey and come back with something to that point. In past surveys, many parents have indicated that they would prefer, and I noticed in the article on South Kingstown as well, I don't know if that's a done deal. A number of people have indicated down there that they are concerned that their older siblings would get home sooner than the younger ones for the reasons of, taking care of them after school.
I have that article right in front of me, and a parent indicated that she depends on her older children to help with younger children getting off the bus in the afternoon. She also doesn't know how sending her elementary school child to school for 7:25 is healthy. She can barely get her own child up, moving and eating breakfast, and on the bus as it is. So that was part. I actually have the article right here from December 3rd, and it doesn't really. It just talks about the discussion. I don't think that any decision was made. Just that also the survey is still available for South Kingstown community to take.
I think since this is such an important issue for parents, for the school committee, there's a lot of different issues involved here, that it would probably be a good idea to do some kind of survey. We haven't done one in a while, and I think people's intentions change, and while they may not have wanted to, for example, flip the high school and the elementary schools in the past, maybe now people have changed their minds. So I think we need to hear from the parents and the community in order for us to make an informed decision. So if we could go down that path and get a survey out, I think that would be very helpful.
We can set something up.
Would you like to give your superintendent's report?
Sure. Very briefly, I just want to recognize a few people for a lot of the great work that's being done in the district. First and foremost, Dr. Humbert and our technology coach, Kim Ramos. They've recently been given recognition at Fuse RI. Fuse RI is a statewide organization that North Kingstown participates in for moving toward blended learning. And this was the first time they gave out such an award, and they saw North Kingstown's leadership as exemplary in this regard. And so congratulations to them. I also want to congratulate Mr. Ferrario for being named the RIASP Elementary Board Director. It's good to have NK represented there as well. Janice Strain for her organization of the STEAM Night at North Kingstown High School that happened recently. Great success. We've also have a recognition program in the district starting now, which we're calling the Shining Star Awards, and a number of members around the district have received that award recently, and I will mention who they are at each meeting. It's an award that goes to any adult or student in the community who really, goes above and beyond in their contribution to that school community and to North Kingstown School Department. And the first round of recipients, there's a couple more schools to be represented in the next week or so. But Christine Malley, clerk at Quidnesset, is one award winner. Lisa Amato, a TA at Forest Park. Jackie Alfano, a TA at Hamilton. Janine Patil, PTO president at Stony Lane. Susan Schwab, teacher at Wickford Middle School. Janice Strain, teacher at the high school. And Sam Crooks, a teacher at Davisville Academy, who shared the award with the students in his class for their great work. So congratulations to all of them. Thank you to all of them for their great contributions. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
Are there any exemptions to the consent agenda? Mr. Jones?
C2 and C3. I just need a roll call vote.
Was it C2 and C3?
Yeah.
Any other exemptions?
G1 for me. And D1, please.
Are there any further exemptions? Can I have a motion to approve all other items on the consent agenda except C2, C3, D1, and G1? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Mr. Jones, C2 and 3?
Yes, I would just ask for a roll call vote to approve those.
Mrs. Healy?
I guess motion to approve C2.
Second?
All those in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Mrs.
Abstain.
Healy, could you please do a roll call?
So this is a motion to approve C2. Mrs. Avanzato, Mr. Blasbog,
Aye.
Mrs. Clarkin,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Abstain.
Mrs. McGovern.
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, motion to approve C3.
Second?
Mrs. Healy, would you please call the roll for C3?
Mrs. Avanzato, Mr. Blasbog,
Aye.
Mrs. Clarkin,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Abstain.
Mrs. McGovern.
Aye. Thank you. Mr. Jones, D1.
Yes, thank you. Motion to approve D1, please.
Do I have a second?
Aye.
Discussion?
Yeah. First of all, thank Mrs. King and whoever else worked to put these together. I know it was the intent of the committee to ask to do an RFP, and it may have slowed up a little, but I think it was useful to point out the the wide variety of differences in the cost and going with the lowest cost provider. I will also say that two comments. One is that, there's been a lot of discussion in the papers and other things about the town hall and other stuff, and not to rehash that, but simply to point out that, part of this is about a best use of our facilities and getting out in front of understanding that and looking forward prevents us from being in situations where we either have to spend a lot of money on fixing stuff that maybe we aren't the highest priority or best value. Second, I think it dovetails with the discussion we just had on start times. I mean, ultimately, we can do some of these things, and they're Band-Aids about start times, but the start times and other issues are really related to an optimal allocation of our facilities. We know our demographics are changing. We know the enrollments are changing. We know we have buildings that are 60 to 80 years old, and we can't keep pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into them. At some point, you have to say it makes more sense to build new, take advantage of technology, take advantage of more energy efficient and other things, and, oh, by the way, allocate those buildings in the right way so you solve some of your transportation and other issues too. So I think it's very prudent we start getting out in front of this as soon as we can, and the study is part of it.
All those in favor of approving D1?
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Jones, G1?
Yeah, I'm not sure quite if there's a motion to approve this, or if this was an informational item.
This is a matter of, this survey is a survey for students. It is something that traditionally superintendents have approved. It was brought to the attention to the groups that put this together, RIDE and a division of the Board of Health, from a school committee member in one Rhode Island town that by law these should be approved by school committees. So that's why you have it in front of you before. We've been doing it in the district for about 6 years, and we find the information very valuable, specifically to groups like Kathy Yeager's group working together for wellness and understanding some of the habits of our students and as related to their health.
Okay. Motion to approve G1.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the FY16 School Committee Superintendent Goals.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening.